Welcome to Chapter 5, Lesson 2, where we are going to learn how to manipulate artwork within layers. So the file you're going to need is your living room file, which should be called last name, first name, living room, and you're also going to need the 5-2. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our 5-2, and we are going to copy our rug. So taking our selection tool, and then doing Control-C, we're going to edit and copy. And then we're going to go back to our living room file. Now we're going to use our Control key to manipulate where the layer is when we create a new layer. When you hold down Control and then go to your Create a New Layer, it's going to create that new layer at the top of your layers. So now we're going to, on our layer 4, do Control and V, and we're going to paste the rug. We're going to double click on our layer and we're going to rename it rug, and we can go ahead and change our rug color to yellow. So once we do that, we're going to hit OK, and then we want our rug to look like it's underneath our chair. So what we can do is we can click and hold on our rug layer, and then we can drag and drop it in between our chair and our foreground. So you're going to see that light blue line in between those layers, and then release your mouse. So now it looks like the rug is underneath the chairs. So we need to take our selection tool, and we need to move the rug so that it looks more realistic. And when you deselect, now the rug looks like it's under the chair. So now what we're going to do is we're going to learn how to merge layers. So I want you to come to your foreground layer, and I want you to make it visible. So now what you're going to do is you are going to go to your 5-2, take your selection tool, click on your sculpture, do Control-C or Edit Copy, and then come back to your living room. You are going to hold down the Control key again and create a new layer. But this time we're going to call the layer Sculpture. So we're going to double click, call the layer Sculpture, and we're going to keep this at a magenta color. So go ahead and hit OK. And now we're going to do Control V, and our new sculpture is pasted onto our sculpture layer. So taking our selection tool, we're going to move our sculpture over so that it's on our table over in the corner. Now some of it's going to be off of your actual artboard and in that scratch area, and that's okay. Just put it on the corner of this table. Once we have our sculpture positioned, we're going to merge our sculpture with another layer. So to do that, the first thing we're going to do is click our foreground layer, and then we're going to click and drag up to where it is the top layer. Then I want you to click on your sculpture layer and then hold down Control and click on your foreground layer. By clicking the sculpture layer first, we're saying we want to merge the sculpture layer into our foreground layer. So then we're going to come over to this little box with the lines in it, click on it, and there's going to be an option called Merge Selected. Once we click on that, you'll notice now that the foreground layer is the only one that remained, and that our sculpture layer is gone. Now if you click on this little arrow and expand it, you'll see that our sculpture is now underneath our foreground layer. And I just want to remind you that if your layers are locked or if they're hidden, you won't be able to merge them. So if you're having issues doing that, make sure that your layers are not locked and that they are visible. So you can see that we also have sublayers within that layer now. So we've got the table, the couch, and now the sculpture. So we're going to go ahead and manipulate these sublayers, and they're manipulated very similar to the way we manipulate the main layers. So I want you to go ahead and double click on the one with the picture of the table, and I want you to rename this one In Table, and then double click on your one with the sofa, and we're going to name that one Sofa. And then double click on the one with your sculpture, and we're going to name this one Sculpture. So as you can see, our sculpture right now is behind our end table. So we can fix that by clicking and dragging on our sculpture up until it's above our end table. So now it looks like the sculpture is sitting on the end table. And you'll also notice that when we expand our sofa, that there are these different segments of our sofa, and we can turn these on and off just like we can any other regular layer to see how all this artwork fits together. But when you click that arrow again, you can collapse them, and then you can click the one on your foreground and collapse that. So all you'll see is those 4 main layers. So next we're going to learn how to create new sublayers. So we need to go back to our 5-2, and we need to select the cabinet and do our Control-C or our Edit and Copy. Then you're going to come back to your living room, and you're going to hold down the Control key and select Create a New Layer again. And then go ahead and do your Control-V for your paste. And then we're going to double click on our layer, and we are going to rename this layer Entertainment. Once we've renamed it Entertainment, let's go ahead and save our color as violet, or it may be magenta on all of ours. Yes, let's save it as magenta. So now we have our new entertainment stand saved as magenta, and I want you to take your selection tool and move your cabinet over to where it's just barely past that cabinet that you can see on the wall. So then we can deselect everything, make sure it's in the spot we want it. And now we're going to go back to our 5-2 document, and we are going to copy our plant. So we're going to take our selection tool, click on our plant, do Control-C or Edit Copy, come back to the living room and do Control-V, but not until we have our entertainment layer selected, because we want this to be on our entertainment layer. So select our entertainment layer and then do Control-V. And now if you expand your entertainment layer, there are 2 different artworks on this layer. So we're going to take our selection tool and let's go ahead and move our plant to the side of our entertainment stand. And now this image looks a little funny because the plant looks like it's in front of the cabinet, which would not be right from this angle. So we can click on our cabinet layer and drag it up above our plant. So now it looks like that plant's tucked behind that cabinet. So now we're going to show how you can use your sublayers to make reflections or changes or copies of images. Go to your artboard and take your selection tool, click on your plant, and then you're going to go to your reflection tool, which is a hidden tool of your rotate tool. So you'll probably see your rotate tool, click and hold, select your reflection tool. And then make sure that your plant is selected and double click on your reflection tool. You're going to select a vertical option, and then you're going to make a copy of it. Now you'll see there's an additional plant in your artboard as well as listed in your subgroups, and they're facing different directions so that they don't look like exact copies. So going to your selection tool, you're going to click on your plant and drag it over to the other side of this cabinet. Now once again, it looks a little funny with our plant behind our cabinet, so let's go ahead and click on that second plant in our subgroup and drag it up above our cabinet. And maybe not quite above our cabinet. Sorry, we were dragging the wrong one. So sometimes you might have to play around with it before you get to the right one. So now we don't want our plant to look like it's just an exact copy. So we can actually use even more of our sublayers to delete some of the features of it. So if you click on that second plant and that little arrow, let's expand it out. And now you'll see all these different images and sublayers of our plant. So let's try and make it look a little different by clicking on any of these sublayers, and we're going to click and drag and hover it over the trash can and release. And that's going to change the look a little bit of the plant so that we don't just have an exact copy of the one that we had before. So then you can minimize or collapse this one, and we're going to double click on the name and name this one Plant 2. And then let's double click on our cabinet layer and we can name this Cabinet. And then finally, the plant that we originally started with is going to be Plant 1. So go ahead and save your work here. But we are still going to work on a couple more things, which we're going to talk about how to move objects between different layers. So I want you to collapse your entertainment layer so that you can just see your 5 main layers. So now we need to go to that 5-2 again, and we're going to take our selection tool, click on the one labeled electronics, do our Control-C or our edit copy, go back to our living room, and we're going to hold down our Control key, make a new layer, and then we can do Control-V, paste our electronics, and then let's rename this one real quick to electronics. So once we have that renamed, let's select a color of magenta, so the same one as our entertainment. So double click, open our layer options, and change this. Actually, let's leave it as cyan, so it's a different color. So we're going to leave that as our light blue color, and then take our selection tool. We're going to put it so that it's right on top of this cabinet here. So we need to change the fill, or the layering of these objects so that it looks more realistic for our image. So what we're going to do is we need to make the plant on the right position in front of the electronics to make it realistic. So I want you to go to your entertainment sublayer and expand, or layer, and expand it to see your sublayers. You're going to take this plant 2, and we're going to find a way where we can move it to our electronics layer. So on these little circles, it's going to be the option when we click it for the artwork that's being selected. So I want you to click on plant 2, and then I want you to click and drag up to your electronics. And when we do that, we're going to make sure that electronics is highlighted and then release. And it's automatically going to make plant 2 the top sublayer in that group. So we can click anywhere on our artboard to deselect, and now it looks like it's more visually realistic. So now I want you to go back to your 5-2, click on your Matisse, and do a Control-C, come back to your living room, and hold down your Control key, select new layer, or create a new layer, and then do Control-V to paste. Let's go ahead and take our selection tool and reposition our artwork on the wall. Click anywhere on our artboard to deselect. Then we're going to double click on this layer, rename it Matisse, and let's do a color of one we don't have yet, which we're going to make it orange, and then go ahead and hit OK. And now we're actually going to merge our Matisse layer with our electronics. So we're going to click on our Matisse layer, and we're going to click and drag down to where it's hovered over electronics and release. And now that layer is now part of our electronics layer. So what I want you guys to do now is create 2 new layers with one for our lamp. So we're going to come over, use our selection tool, click on our lamp, do Control Copy, come back to our living room, hold down our Control key, create a new layer, paste, and let's reposition this one at the top of the room. And we're going to rename this one Lamp. And then going back to our showroom, we're going to click on our table, Control-C, coming back to our living room, holding down the Control key, creating a new layer, Control-V to paste, moving our table so that it looks like it's on the ground, and then double clicking and renaming this one Table, I believe. Yes, Table. And that is all you are going to do for lesson 2, but you need to use this file and move on to lesson 3.